I'm Chad, and welcome to today's video. As you've noticed, I am not riding a motorcycle right now, and that is because I am still recovering from the injuries sustained from falling off the back of my WR250X when I looped it last week. My thumb's still pretty busted up and swollen. Again, pretty sure the bones aren't broken. X-rays said that they weren't, so just on the recovery train here, but can't quite operate a throttle yet or use a brake lever and put some significant pressure through my hand that way. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at a vehicle that I don't often feature in my channel, at least not prominently, and it's something that's actually pretty critical to some of the content that I produce, and that is my 2020 Mercedes-Benz Sprinter 2500 with a high roof. If you've been watching the channel for a while and are subscribed, thank you. But you'll probably recall that back in March of this year, I posted a video just going over this van right after I bought it. I bought it in February of this year, 2021, and it's the first new vehicle I've ever bought in my life, as well as my most expensive purchase to date. Now again, I haven't talked about it much since I got it, other than just featuring it in clips of track day videos, because obviously the reason I bought this van is to take my bikes to and from the racetrack. But I thought it would be nice to update you guys on how the ownership experience has been at this point, little things that I've done to make ownership a little bit more pleasant, and just my overall level of satisfaction with the van. So let's begin by talking about comfort. While this is a Mercedes-Benz, it is still a cargo van, and it's more purpose-built than anything. It's far from the most uncomfortable thing in the world, but at the same time, I wouldn't exactly say it feels luxurious to drive in a lot of situations. This van, again being a cargo van, isn't very well insulated like your typical passenger cars are, especially luxury passenger cars. So you do get a decent amount of road noise, not really too much from the road, but more from the wind, because this van is very tall. I haven't measured it, but if I had to guess just based on how tall I am and how high over me it is, I'd say it's probably pretty close to, if not 9 feet tall. Naturally, when this thing gets moving up at speeds over 65 miles per hour, it just is chugging through the wind. It's about as aerodynamic as a brick wall, so it just creates noise. It's really not that bad. The level of noise is certainly lower than the amount of noise you get just wearing a helmet on a motorcycle, but it is something that I think is worth mentioning. It's not obnoxious. It's, again, not the loudest thing in the world, but it is a bit noisier than, you know, an F-150, a truck, any kind of car that you might be accustomed to driving, for example, just because of the wind noise. Something that actually helps cut down on that wind noise is this cargo partition that's behind me. The rear of the van isn't insulated. It is finished and has a floor and has some trim panels on the lower halves of the doors and the walls and stuff, but it isn't like really insulated like again, a car would be. From my experience in renting a 2020 Sprinter van that did not have a cargo partition before, this van is actually quite a bit quieter. And some other advantages to the cargo partition are that when you go to get in the van on an early morning when it's cold, like I just did, the passenger compartment heats up much quicker because the van's heater isn't trying to heat all this empty space behind me. It's just trying to heat the immediate area right where I'm sitting. Same goes for air conditioning. So at the end of a track day, after I've loaded up and I want to get in my van and cool off, it does not take that long for the passenger compartment to be cooled off by the air conditioning. So big plus there, in addition to just cutting down on wind noise. My van seats are the standard captain's chairs, finished in the Mercedes-Benz leatherette, so some kind of synthetic leather. These seats are fairly comfortable. They're pretty soft, but they're not very supportive, which was something that I had an issue with initially, especially, you know, making 2.5+ hour drives out to the track. My solution to that was to buy a set of seat covers from Amazon that had lumbar support added to them. This has been super helpful and really increased the level of comfort that I have while driving this van. And being that I'm doing so often for very long periods of time, hours and hours at a time, I would say it's essential that I'm in a comfortable position and feel well supported throughout that period of time. So some other things, just as far as the ride quality goes, this van actually rides pretty smooth for a cargo van. The suspension's a little bit firm when the van isn't loaded, obviously because it's sprung to be able to carry up to 4,600 pounds. But when it is loaded up with bikes in my gear, it does actually drive a bit smoother, especially when you're cruising on the highway. A couple creature comfort things that I want to talk about that I have found to be so critical, and I'm really glad that I didn't compromise and spent the extra money on these features. The first is Apple CarPlay. So my van has a 7-inch touchscreen, and that has wireless CarPlay, which I've come to realize now is actually really rare. So my understanding is that truly wireless CarPlay is actually pretty uncommon when buying a new vehicle. Most Apple CarPlay systems and Android Auto systems still require a wired connection to the device to function, but that's not the case with my van. So it's super nice. I get in, I start it up, it connects right to my phone. I have my apps on the screen, and on my steering wheel I actually have a little touch scroll pad that I can use to navigate between the different apps and such that I have. So don't have to take my hand off the wheel to change my music or update my directions. And there's buttons on the steering wheel too that interface with all the other features. So I can ask Siri questions or to give me directions somewhere. Super awesome feature, and has significantly improved my experience in owning this van. So one of the other creature comfort features beyond just the standard heat AC, power windows, power locks, that I really love, and I think this is probably my favorite one, pretty close tie with CarPlay, but the Distronic adaptive cruise control system. This is super nice, again, especially when you're driving 2.5-3 hours out to a racetrack on the freeway and you're dealing with stop and go traffic through like Los Angeles, for example, which I have to drive through to get to Buttonwillow from where I'm at. But it's awesome to just be able to set my cruise control and rarely have to do anything else other than steer and pay attention. So the van has a radar system that detects an object in front of you, and basically what it does is will keep a certain amount of distance between itself and that object up to a certain maximum speed that you set. But one of the things that's really nice about the system too is it will slow you down but not cancel itself. So if you have traffic in front of you that's traveling slower than you are, it's going to slow you down accordingly and will actually even bring you to a stop. Now, I have had some situations where I've decided to intervene and use the brakes just to prevent the van from needing to make a last-minute stop, and also because I'm not totally comfortable in letting the van make a last-minute stop when I've got 2 motorcycles and, you know, hundreds of pounds worth of equipment like a generator, my race suits, food, an air mattress, and all that other stuff in there. But in stop and go traffic, it'll still work. So it'll bring you to a complete stop in stop and go traffic and hold you there for a couple seconds. If it is more than just a couple seconds before traffic starts moving again, all you have to do is give the accelerator a little tap and it'll just pick right back on up and start accelerating as quickly as is safe to do so with that vehicle in front of you. Now, a few other noteworthy features that I really like. First is lane departure assist. That's super nice and helpful. This is a pretty big vehicle to operate, so it is helpful to just have that little bit of guidance if you're kind of drifting off a little bit to the shoulder. Especially at first, it took me a little bit of time just to get used to how high up you sit and where things are in relation to how you see them, just due to parallax and the way the human eye sees. The van also has Crosswind Assist, which is really cool, and I've actually was activated once when I was driving up to Buttonwillow. Driving through the mountains up there was a crazy crosswind and it just hit the van super hard, and before I could do anything, the van just corrected itself. I got a little warning that flashed on my dash letting me know that the Crosswind Assist had been activated. Some pretty cool technology in this cargo van that I've never had in any vehicle before, which is really awesome and has been super enjoyable. And then, of course, one of the things that I really like, and this is just a superficial thing, but, you know, I bought a Mercedes-Benz and I wanted a leather-wrapped steering wheel, and oof, that is a nice leather-wrapped steering wheel. Far finer than I think you'd find in any other cargo van. Overall, it's been very easy to adapt to driving this. Despite it being 9 feet tall and having a 144-inch wheelbase, it's actually really easy to drive. It handles nicely, it's very easy to place, the mirrors are very helpful, especially the convex parts that are on the lower part of each mirror, as well as the backup camera. But this thing's pretty easy to drive, maneuver, position. You just have to be mindful again of how tall it is and how long it is and the blind spots that it does have. Another feature that I almost forgot to mention, which is blind spot monitoring, which that's a must-have if you're driving a van like this, in my opinion. It's pretty easy to drive and pretty enjoyable. So now that we've talked about how it is as just a regular vehicle. Let's talk about it from a functional standpoint and its purpose, which is to haul motorcycles for me. So this is something that it does fantastically. As I mentioned before, the cargo compartment is somewhat finished. It has a floor, it has mounting hooks, it has L-tracks installed on the driver's side wall and the passenger side door. So very easy to tie stuff down and make sure everything is nice and secured in there. There's a ton of space in the back too. I measured at one point, and if I remember correctly, the length of the cargo compartment is about 12 feet and it's about 8 feet wide. So you can put a lot of stuff in there. I've regularly been able to load 2 motorcycles, both my Daytona 675R and my Tuono V4, and secure them up against the walls of the van, just using 2 ratchet straps per bike, which is a cool trick that I saw on, I think, Motorcycle News on YouTube here. Easy way to secure 2 bikes if you're bringing 2 bikes with you. Otherwise, I'll just put my Daytona in the middle if that's the only bike I'm taking to the track, such as during a race weekend. Make sure that it's secured and just load everything else up around it. When it's loaded, it's actually still really easy to drive. It doesn't really feel all that different, to be honest. If you floor it, there's a little bit less pull, but it still pulls pretty strong. The 2500 class Sprinters have a 3-liter V6 diesel engine that is turbocharged. So 325 foot-pounds of torque, I believe at 1400 RPM or something like that. The van will get up and go off the line if it has to. It can make a reasonable overtake if it needs to. But for the most part, I just set this thing at like 75 or 80 miles an hour with the cruise control and just go with the traffic. You know, I'm not racing around trying to overtake people with this thing. It makes no sense at all. This is a terrible vehicle to try to do that with. So I'll set my cruise control up there, especially on the more open, higher speed limit stretches of highway going out to the tracks that are just in the middle of nowhere, and just cruise. And it does a great job of that. It does a good job of getting up to speed and getting onto the freeway, even with stuff loaded. I'd imagine about as well as like a Nissan Versa or something with a little tiny 1.8 four-banger or 1.6 or whatever they are. It's not bad. Handles the weight well too when you are driving. Again, I always try to be extra mindful of the fact that this thing is very tall and very long and heavy, and especially when it's loaded up with stuff, will take corners a little bit slower than I would if it wasn't loaded, but overall it drives nicely. Brakes work really well. It accelerates well enough when it needs to. It's pretty good. And again, with the L-tracks and the pre-installed hooks on the floor, it's very easy to secure bikes and everything that you need, including my ramp that I secure vertically up against the wall after I'm done loading, just so it's nice and out of the way. The Sprinter does pretty well on fuel too. I'm able to make it round trip to and from Buttonwillow on 1 tank of fuel and still have about 100 miles left in the tank. And on average, I've seen between 18.5 and 19 miles per gallon round trip, and that's again going through stop and go traffic in LA with my cruise set up around 75, 80 most of the time. So pretty impressive. So that's fuel economy that's actually on par with a B7 Audi S4 that I used to own, which is very impressive given the fact that this is, again, as aerodynamic as a brick wall and hauling over 1,000 pounds worth of motorcycles and gear, and it can still achieve those kinds of numbers. So one challenge that I've had with the van, which is due to how high it is and how much ground clearance it has, is that it can be difficult to load bikes, especially on a flat surface. So I have a 6-foot aluminum folding ramp that folds out to be about 2.5 or 3 feet wide, which makes it very easy to clutch walk a bike up and be able to stand on the ramp and not feel like you're gonna drop the bike off the ramp or anything like that. It makes me feel very comfortable. But being that it's only 6 feet long, it's at a pretty steep angle. It's so steep, in fact, that my Daytona's belly pan will scrape. If I'm going up from flat ground, it'll scrape pretty hard. And my Tuono just straight up won't make it up. If I did try to run it up the ramp from flat ground, it would surely be stuck on the belly pan or the oil pan or something and just be a bad time. So what I usually do to work around this is just load it up off of a driveway or a curb. There's one not too far away from where my garage door is, so that's usually what I'll do to load. And then when I'm unloading at the track and reloading, I'll just try to find some area of unlevel ground or like drive off into the dirt or something where the pavement is a little bit higher up so that it just decreases the angle of the ramp. Now I could solve this by just buying a longer ramp, but I did buy my 6-foot ramp not that long ago, and it does work really well so long as I can find some way to get the van to sit a little bit lower in relation to the ground. So I've just been working like that, and it's been working out so far. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Overall, I've been super happy with the van. I love it. It's still kind of fun to drive, you know, despite it not being a high performance sports car or something like that. I do enjoy just cruising around in this thing. So yeah, I love the van. I love just driving it on a regular basis too. It's fun to just kind of sit up this high and just be able to look out at the world. The visibility out of the windshield is awesome because it's so tall. So you can see all the trees, and if there's mountains off in the distance, you're able to really take in the scenery. And other than that, it's been great for hauling the bikes. It's super easy, and I really love being able to have them contained in an enclosed space where I don't have to risk people messing with them if I decide to stop and sleep at a hotel while I'm driving out or something like that. It's going to set me up to be able to do some longer road trips and go ride some tracks that are out of state and a lot further than just what's within Southern California. And one of the other things that's really cool about it too is once you're at the track and the van's all unloaded, you have plenty of cargo space that you can use to sleep in. So I've actually brought an air mattress with me to the racetrack and just camped in the van, and it's gone great. Now, obviously, I'd want to get like an AC unit or something if I were going to be doing that when it's hotter during the summer, or a space heater of some sort when it's cooler during the winter. But, you know, when the time's right, it's super easy to camp in this thing. You really don't have to do much more than that. In summary, if you're thinking about buying some kind of a bike hauling vehicle, I'd highly consider a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van or another cargo van. But with that, I'm gonna wrap this one up. So thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you gave me a gentle little click of the like button. Be sure to subscribe to catch more motorcycling related content and some Sprinter van stuff as well. I have a 2012 Triumph Daytona 675R race bike that I'm running in a couple different club racing series just as an amateur, but still getting out to the racetrack and going as fast as I can. I've also got my Aprilia Tuono V4 factory that I've made a lot of videos with. Check those out. And my Yamaha WR250X Supermoto that I looped recently and am in the process of fixing. I'll be back to making regular motorcycle content as soon as my thumb's all healed up and good to handle a throttle and a brake lever, but look forward to having you stick around when we're back to riding. So I hope to catch you in the next one, and until then, later.